welcome founder and CEO of Peak, Ruzwana Bashir, Chief Commercial Officer of TUI Musement, Nishank Gopalkrishnan, and co-founder and senior partner of McKinsey Company, Jules Seeley, in discussion with Skift Head of Research, Seth Borko.
All right. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining. It's such a pleasure to have you here on this panel. Talk about
Thank you.
Great
to be here today.
Yeah, we got all over the world represented. We got Amsterdam, New York,
Boston, London, some combination. Yep.
Yeah, some combination of the two. All right. So, let's jump into this. I'm going to start with a bit of a question for all of you. One of the big themes of this McKinsey report is that experiences are moving higher in the booking funnel. We saw that chart where we talked about it. I mean, I want to ask you your opinion on this. Like, is this something that you agree with, and how are you seeing this show up in your businesses? We'll start with you, Ruzwana.
Yes, absolutely. I think that one of the things is this audience doesn't need to be told that experiences matter to people. It's the reason people are traveling. I think what we have seen is over the last decade a big change in how people are looking for experiences and discovering them. And I think that social media has a big role to play in how much of that kind of top of the funnel experiences interest there's been. Ultimately, we're now advertising everything that we're doing. Experiences are a great way to share these moments that are very memorable and matter to us, but they're also a way to share our identity. And so what we can see is that there's a drive towards having some of these memorable moments with people that we care about. The spend is up, so experiences since 2019, people are spending 65% more than they did. The equivalent on products is about 12%. So there's a big leap in how much people are spending and the way that they think about experiences and why they go. We're going to talk a little bit about thematic travel, right? We all know about the Taylor Swift effect, right? Where the average person is spending over $1,000 on all of these other things like dining, accommodation, and experiences as part of that. So I think what we're seeing is that kind of engagement and top of the funnel interest is coming from this desire to go and do this thing that people are discovering in a number of ways, which includes this kind of social media entertainment. And then they're getting there and they want to document it. Yeah. So I think that's really changed the role that experiences have, and especially for younger travelers who are actually more willing to spend on experiences and splurge on that area versus others.
And Nishank, same question to you. I mean, how are you thinking about experiences higher in the booking funnel? That's also something you're seeing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at TUI as a group, we are sort of uniquely positioned in the sense that we have all the online demand that you spoke about, social media, booking platforms, etc. But we also have retail advisors in stores who are helping customers make their travel decisions, right? And over the last 5 years, we've seen like a big shift in terms of people coming into these stores and saying, hey, I want to go to a particular destination because I want to do something there, or I want to choose destination A versus B because there's something more exciting, right? So clearly there is, I think, in the decision-making process, experiences have become very, very integral to it. I think the part that still sort of lags is the booking moment itself, right? Yeah. If you look at flights and hotels, people typically are booking them 30, 60 days in advance, whereas experiences, all the action is mostly in the last 7 days, right? Like that's when people decide when they want to travel, what they want to do, pick their moods and the weather. So yeah, I think there's a disconnect between booking, but I think in terms of intent of travel, experiences right up there.
Yeah, that's an interesting dichotomy you're pointing out. The path to booking experiences still is towards the end of the booking path, but it's not like maybe as captured in the data, but it actually sits at the top of that inspiration decision tree. What do you think on this topic, Jules?
Yeah, so I think it's a source of real interest for the travel space overall, as the audience here knows. I think for the sort of classic travel operators, for airlines and hotels, this is an area of particular value because it's now much more part of the overall booking choice and experience. And so we see airlines now trying to get involved much more in what does this mean at the early stage of the funnel, and depending on the destination selection, which you shared the slide, that experiences are now a very important part of destination selection as well. So for airlines, it's trying to tie into how does a customer think about the place they want to go, and how does the airline tie that into its offering. For hotels, I think there's a couple of interesting elements. There's the loyalty element of how does it tie to, as you mentioned, as Marriott's doing through Bonvoy, how do you tie experiences in as part of your customer proposition? And then I think the piece that's very interesting, and ties to your point on the near-in booking as well, for hotels, they are in destination. I think this in-destination piece of experiences is very valuable as well. A lot of people book, as you say, in a narrow window. A lot is actually done right there in the moment as well. And so hotels have this sort of unique opportunity to be there and present with the customer on their journey. And so what role can they play in helping to tie up experiences or adjust them in the moment of the trip? But it's still very much heavily also an offline part of the travel journey, and that makes it quite different, I think, from a lot of the other travel booking.
Yeah, one of the things we heard a lot from a lot of operators is that, like, the hotel front desk has a huge role to play in how people choose what they want to do and experiences. I mean, as we're talking about choice, Nishank, I actually wanted to go to you on this one. You know, we were talking a little bit about, I gave the example of the Eras Tour, and you mentioned this too, Ruzwana. Eras Tour or the Sphere, this great residency, or this huge event, and these are these once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. They're driving these travel decisions, but the reality of the experience sector is that there's a lot more, work-a-day tours too. There's bus tours, there's food tours, there's cooking tours, there's all sorts of interesting stuff to do. How do you think that those two sides of the industry are kind of overlapping or interacting?
Yeah, I think you can look at sort of it as a volume play versus iconic events, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at thematic events like Taylor Swift and her impact on GDP across the world, it's iconic. It probably is repeatable across, I guess, her lifetime of being an iconic singer. But as a business, I think it's quite difficult to sort of live off that completely, right? You need to look at 90% of travel is happening in the key destinations where you are going to the top attractions, you're doing the top tours, and a lot has to be done over there in terms of making sure you have the right choice, you have the right products in front of the customer. So I think it's a balance between the two, right? Going back to our points about booking windows, if you're doing thematic travel, you're typically booking the experience or the reason for going there right up front before you even book your hotel or flight. Whereas the other way around, you reach your hotel, you go to a concierge, or you get recommendations from social media. And I think it's important for travel companies like us to be part of that funnel in terms of being a consideration in destination. So it's a combination of being there online, but also being there in the hotel or having some kind of advisory role over there.
And yeah, so that's an interesting point you're saying. It's about being there, about linking with a hotel. We were chatting a bit backstage about like tours and activities as an ancillary product, and I think you both have a pretty big B2B business. I mean, maybe we should talk about that a little bit. I mean, I'll actually start with you though, Jules. Like, I mean, how are you seeing tours play in as like ancillaries? Is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think the traditional travel companies would like to be part of the offering to sell them. And so if you're booking, your airline or your hotel or other accommodation, and you're on that booking journey anyway, that's a very natural trigger point to be able to offer experiences. But those companies don't necessarily have the breadth of supply information about them. And so trying to plug in that sort of platform layer into their booking flow and share in some of the value as well. But it's maybe not only a value piece, it's that they want to be part of that customer experience. And so being able to plug in a platform and other capabilities and sort of pull these experiences through so that customers can see them and make their selections, I think that B2B angle is a very important part of the industry.
Yeah. I mean, Ruzwana, and then I'll go to you, Nishank. Ruzwana, you want to talk to us? You go first, Nishank? Yeah, all right.
Yeah, I think I think Ruzwana mentioned it, right? Arguably, the most exciting part of travel is experiences. Obviously, I'm biased because I work in the industry. But, most of the industry leaders who I speak to, when we want to distribute our products B2B, the main reason they want to be part of the experiences conversation is because those are the memories that you take back as travelers, right? If you look back at any of your travels, it's about the best food that you had, the amazing art you saw in the museums. It's all about that, right? So as a travel brand, be it an airline or a hotel, or an OTA, you want to really be part of that conversation, be part of that memory. And it really eventually leads to greater loyalty. I'll give you an example of TUI. We've been looking at our customers from the Nordics, right, for the past 5 years. And we've been looking at NPS scores for everyone who took a packaged holiday and everyone who took a packaged holiday and also an experience. And there's anywhere between 15 to 20 points of an NPS spread between the customers who take experiences versus those who do not. So clearly a strong correlation between loyalty. I like to call it the loyalty ancillary. I think it's something that will give you short-term revenue, but I think in the long term will give you more bookings for your core product.
Yeah.
I also think there's a local component to it that we can't forget about, which is that experiences are the things that people can do close to home. And I think that, especially in the US, a lot of people forget that what people consider travel can sometimes be 100 miles away, or even 50 miles away. And so I think what experiences provide is this dose of frequency and an opportunity, again, to engage your customer in these really interesting ways that don't always have to be a huge trip. Right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really powerful part of it. And a lot of our, with Pete, we've done billions of dollars of bookings through our platform. A lot of that is actually people in their local market finding fun things to do. And so I think that gives an opportunity for travel brands to have a way to remain relevant, even when someone is closer to their own home.
That's a great point. And that's one of the biggest challenges that many travel brands face is how do you engage your customers 365 days a year, not just when they're on vacation.
And that's also, I think, one of the reasons that I think we see the consumer looking for things that feel a little bit more unique or special. They might not want to do those standard cookie cutter experiences. And I think we are seeing this space evolve and change.
Yeah.
There's a lot of new types of experiences that are coming through that are having a lot of impact on the market that appeal both to locals and to travelers. And so I think that will continue. There's a lot of growth there. The demand is kind of allowing new entrepreneurs to come in. And there's all these businesses, especially in things like immersives, that didn't exist 5 years ago and now are doing tens of millions of dollars of revenues in their location. So I really think that you will continue to see that. And I think the travel brands have an opportunity to kind of be able to participate in how people think about how they find fun at home as well as abroad.
Yeah, and you're talking about the future of the industry. One of the conversations we have, and I think so interesting, is I think there's many people who would say, oh, well, we've seen how this path plays out. There's this digitization, we're bringing experiences online. It's going to follow the same path that the hotels follow. It's going to follow the same path that the airlines follow. We've seen this story before. But when we were kind of talking backstage, and I'm not sure you all so much agree with that it's such an open and shut case. I mean, what do you think, Ruzwana? Do you think there are lessons to be learned from the path the OTAs took, and do you think we're going a similar way, or do you think experiences will look different in terms of coming online?
I think ultimately it's coming at a different phase of technology. Okay. And so I think we've got to remember that and see that there's opportunities that will accelerate. So I think the big thing I'd remind everybody, and I think it's mentioned in this report, is that digitization of experiences is still pretty low versus hotels, right? So about half of the bookings happen offline still, and that's not mirrored in the hotel experience and airline experience. So I think that we still have this aspect of trying to get all of the businesses online, and that's what the fragmentation and small businesses have struggled a little bit with making this kind of leap online and to keep up with the pace of innovation. That's the reason platforms like Peak have been really important in terms of providing the software tooling to help the merchants digitize and come online. I think that's still a step that needs to happen. I think it can happen faster than it has before, and I think COVID was really an accelerant on that. And I think that there are other trends. We're going to talk about AI. Of course, that's providing a lot of tooling and opportunity to democratize, right? So, traditionally, OTAs were able to provide this experience of helping the consumer find all the options and more easily access what might be relevant for them. I do think some of the tooling that we're going to get with AI and that we're going to provide businesses may give an opportunity for this to be a landscape that's a little different. So on our platform, which combines a lot of local as well as travel experiences, actually only about 10% of the bookings come through OTAs.
Really?
The merchants are actually, and this is across thousands of businesses. So I think that what you really see is in this space, that is an opportunity still for marketplace businesses to be able to do more. But I think it also demonstrates an opportunity for these operators, small operators, to be able to get the kind of tooling that allows them to compete so that perhaps it doesn't end up looking like hotels.
Well, would it be such a bad thing to look like hotels? I don't know. It's a great industry. I like what you're saying about software tooling. I want to come back to that point. This idea of the parallel to OTAs is such a big one. I do want to just ask our other panelists, but I want to ask you, Jules. I mean, what do you think about this comparison? Is it fair? Is it not fair?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Ruzwana. I think there's some similarities in the shift to digitization. I think this fundamental difference, though, that this is a very fragmented industry. It's really interesting doing the report and digging into the operators. There's, of course, a wide range, but many of these operators are very small organizations, often just a handful of people, not very sophisticated in tooling and technology, and their passion is the travel and the experience, and they're doing that because they love to do it. And it was also really interesting talking to them that many of them, they're actually not looking to grow. For them, the quality control around their experience is the small number of people who they have providing it, and that's sort of the passion and what they're trying to bring to their customers. And so for them, the objective is sometimes quite different than in other parts of the travel space. And so I think the big question for customers overall is how do they navigate to these experiences? And when we were looking at some of the data, if you look at, say, a classic tour to a trip to the Eiffel Tower, and if you look on Viator and go back to 2019, there are about 250 of these Eiffel Tower tours. Now there's about 750, so it's tripled in the last 4 or 5 years. And so what do you as a customer do with that? You go and see this 750 Eiffel Tower tours. How do you navigate through that? And I think the difference in hotel and in airline and some of the classic spaces is the customer has the tools to do that. They understand they're looking on price or comfort or a brand they like. There's a particular destination. There's a lot of things you can filter through mechanically. I think as Ruzwana was saying, what's powerful now is there's a whole new suite of technologies around AI that can help the customer navigate in something that's much more sort of subjective. And so the opportunity through platforms and intermediaries to provide some level of curation and personalizing and tailoring, I think that's got disproportionate value here where you've got such a fragmented supply base.
And I'd actually even say, to build on that, I think the AI, we've talked about it often, I think, in the opportunity to help with discovery, which is undoubtedly there, that ability to personalize better so that as a consumer, you get more of what you want. I also think there's a huge opportunity for AI to help the businesses. As you mentioned, often small businesses, a hotel will often have a revenue manager. Most tour and activities operators don't have the luxury of somebody to do that. But with AI, there's a lot of opportunity to provide business analytics and strategists. There's no reason that there shouldn't be the equivalent of an in-house marketer, an in-house social media person, an in-house person who can really help with managing customer support and experience. So I think that there's a lot that the new technology will empower the operators with as well, that allow them actually to start scaling. I think the thing you spoke about around customer experience being incredibly important to operators. We hear that as well. We collect ratings across our operators, millions of reviews, and the average rating is about 4.7 stars, right? They really care about maintaining that. They couldn't really have a way to manage scale plus customer experience. And I think tools and software tools that allow them to do that will really facilitate that opportunity. So I think I'd make the reminder that this is something where the consumer benefits, the business benefits, and overall that industry, you guys have been talking about how much it's going to be continuing to grow. I think that happens because of this.
And Nishank, jump in here. Your thoughts on technology.
Yeah, I think
Did you just go to the Eiffel Tower 750 times and decide if it's good or not? How do you think about that?
Personally, I think it's overwhelming to have 750 options for the Eiffel Tower. So I would personally probably like 5, 10, 20 recommendations, potentially powered through AI, but that's just who I am as a traveler. Just to look at the analogy of sort of hotels, airlines versus activities, right? I think the fact that it's so local and it's an in-destination decision also sort of empowers the local companies a lot more, right? Because you're deciding to buy something in destination 70% of the time, either online or offline. And I think you will see a lot of the larger suppliers, larger attractions, larger museums have a very, very strong online presence as well. Whereas, I think if you compare the hotel or the airline sort of evolution, I think they got left behind by the online platforms a bit because they just didn't provide a good enough experience. But like I live in Amsterdam, and the Van Gogh Museum has an incredible online experience, right? And there's only one Van Gogh Museum, not 50 Marriotts in New York City, right? So I think that's the other element where potentially large distributors will also have a fairly balanced play in the experiences.
Does the challenge then become curation?
Yeah, for sure. I think curation, to me, with AI or without, I think curation is our responsibility as travel companies, right? If you're just going to have a listing of, Craigslist style of 1,000 experiences, what's the point? I think make it relevant, make sure you have the right suppliers on board, make sure you have the right suppliers who are being sustainable, being responsible, make sure you have the right guides, and potentially have 20, 30 really high quality experiences for which you have availability on those dates.
All right, well, thank you all so much for joining us. It was an absolutely fascinating conversation. Really excited to see where the future of this industry goes. As a reminder for everyone, you got the QR code right behind us. Please scan that QR code, download the report, reach out to myself or to Jules if you've got any questions about the report. We co-authored it together, and so we'd love to talk to you about this. And guys, thanks so much for being on stage with me and talking about experiences. I'm really excited about it.
Thanks,
Thank you
Seth.
for having us.
Thank you.
After you. Okay.